kurzes Teil.
First of all, I would like to congratulate you coming from Cannes. Your last film is competing in Cannes. It got great reviews. And I know you came from a very busy schedule. So welcome to our festival and thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, filmmakers influence other filmmakers all the time. And probably Alfred Hitchcock is one of the most influential filmmakers in movie history. But I won't ask the question, why Hitchcock, but why Marnie? I mean, Psycho, North by Northwest, Rear Window would be more conventional choices.
But there's no clip from Marnie in there.
We should on the BFI,
yeah. Marnie is my favorite. I guess I like movies or any art that feels like it's brought to us at great personal cost to the artist, you know. And I think that Marnie is a really personal film for Hitchcock. That's my theory. I don't know. But, you know, Hitchcock was a really fat guy. And he probably had sex with one woman in his life, his wife, Alma. And in all the movies, you know, Hitchcock had a type of female. You know, he liked very kind of distant, icy blondes. You know what I mean?
And he has a he has a very interesting quote why he's using blondes in his films.
Yeah.
He said, blondes make the best victims. They're like virgin snow that shows up the bloody footprints.
Right. Yeah. Hitchcock was also real controlling of women that were in his movies. You know, he had Tippi Hedren under personal contract to him. Yeah. And he would get very jealous about, you know, like Grace Kelly or, you know, he had a whole thing going with Vera Miles where he was grooming her to be a star. And she would do stuff like he wouldn't approve of what relationship she was in, you know, so he would like make her dowdy and put her in Psycho as like, you know, he'd give her like the dowdy part. And from what I can gather, you know, he kind of, he was in love with Tippi Hedren, you know. And Marnie is about a guy who is trying to cure a frigid kleptomaniac. Marnie's essential problem is that she doesn't like to have sex. You know, Sean Connery is essentially trying to unlock the secret hidden trauma, you know, inside her so that she will fuck him, basically.
Yeah.
And it deals with all of those ideas of
so it's
like
a fetish.
Trying to change the other person so that they'll love you, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Marnie, you know. Yeah. And he had sort of dry runs at Marnie, you know, like Vertigo, which is a much more famous example, is obviously just dealing, you know, with Freudian ideas of projection, you know. where he's literally trying to, convert the second woman to his ideal. Is that me? I think this microphone's really close to my face.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. It's me. It's me.
It's you.
I gotta hang on. I reckon if I get it.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe we should change. Is it me?
So that's why Marnie. Are we off? No, I'm on.
We're on.
Okay, we're on.
But I mean, when Hitchcock was asked why he adapted the novel into a film of Marnie, why he did the adaptation, he said the fetish idea. It's about a guy falling in love with a thief because she is the thief and he wants to fall in love, but basically, as you said, it wants to fuck her. But he also felt that he couldn't quite achieve that topic in that film because in Vertigo, James Stewart's character falls in love with Kim Novak.
Yeah.
And do you believe in that sense Marnie is a less effective film compared to Vertigo?
Well, not for me. Not for me. I mean, I think that I think Marnie's really personal because it's like dramatizing. It's about a guy that's trying to get a woman to love him. And I think it's kind of like deeply felt. And I think when the movie was released, it was like he kind of exposed himself, and it was very criticized, and he probably felt embarrassed or something.
Yeah.
But for me, I love Marnie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I find Marnie a very emotional experience.
And you think today it stands along the Hitchcock masterpieces?
For me,
personally,
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's my favorite. The other one I really like is Suspicion, which is just purely dealing with someone's neurosis. I mean, like people like Rear Window, because I think French critics really got into it because they saw it as like cinema or something. You know what I mean? Where he's watching all these different lives play out. Across the way, and Psycho. But Marnie seems very rich. Vertigo's really good. Yeah. But I think he was a guy that was very into the idea of manipulating the audience. And it starts off fairly crudely with just the idea of suspense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you have the people talking around the table, and you have the bomb underneath the table, and you cut to the conversation, you cut to the bomb, you cut to the conversation, you cut to the bomb, and it creates a feeling of suspense, And then when Freud's ideas started to take hold, in America, he starts to get Freudian, and it starts off like fairly crudely, it's like Spellbound, where the clue to the murder is in a dream. But then it starts to get much more sophisticated, like movies like Vertigo and The Birds. Fellini was a big fan of The Birds because he said it was the only movie that's what cinema's really about. And in The Birds, you've got like an Oedipal situation going on between the mother and the son.
Yeah.
The mother's very protective of the son, very jealous of the son. And in comes, the Tippi Hedren character.
Yeah.
And when the mother is upset, there are these bird attacks.
Yeah.
So literally the idea that, it's psychologically devastating.
Yeah.
She's like projecting anger,
Yeah.
And then you get Vertigo, which is dealing with,
anxiety,
projection. It's the idea of like we project the image of the perfect other onto the loved one, and doesn't work very well. And Marnie's interesting because you have to wonder what's going on with the guy. You know what I mean? That he's chasing this woman that doesn't want him. And then you've got Marnie herself. Who it's very simplistic. Do you know what I'm saying?
And Hitchcock at the same time is very entertaining.
Very entertaining, yes.
Very entertaining
film.
filmmaker.
Sean Connery is just fantastic.
And I'm
frightened to move.
And it's a bit. I always found that it's a bit an odd casting, but he's brilliant in the film. But I mean, he's playing this southern kind of guy, and you have Sean Connery, a Scottish guy, but at the end of the day, the film works perfectly. But also, Marnie wasn't well received when it first came out. And, he did Marnie after Psycho and Birds, which were very new not very new territory, but were films that were ahead of his time. Especially Psycho in terms of style was very different. It was very gritty. It was almost shot like a B-movie.
Yeah.
And people perhaps felt Marnie was a bit out of date compared to those. It's very classic. It could easily be a film from the 50s.
Yeah.
And in the 60s, there was a big change in cinema. And people started shooting on real locations. They had more, actual camera moves. And the whole film was shot in a soundstage.
Okay, we're changing over here.
Yeah, okay.
My ears, I've got too much hair.
Maybe the other way around. Bir yardım eder misin?
Not easy. I think you need to put it on behind the yeah.
Like
Yeah. How's that?
No.
Then you wanna take this one? I'll just unplug it so we're not dealing with two
Technical
microphones. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sort it out, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Take this thing and we'll just hide it here.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. How's that?
For Hitchcock, I mean, the art of creating suspense is he said is also the art of involving the audience into a film.
Yeah.
That means the audience is a participant in his film.
Yeah.
And as a filmmaker, do you aim your viewers to be participants in your film?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's the Hitchcock way, and then there's like the Stanley Kubrick way, where he maintains distance.
Yeah, where you're an observer and you never feel like you're part of the story, or it's very hard to identify with a character in terms.
Well, not for me. I don't make, like in my own film, I would never make a film about people that I can't identify with. But we're talking about style, right?
Yeah.
And Hitchcock made subjective movies. Or he, not all the time, but he could make subjective movies, which is essentially that we follow a person's point of view.
Yeah.
And very much they're shot that way. The person looks, we cut to what they see, and we know what they're thinking. Like he looks, sees a glass of water, we know he's thirsty, that kind of thing. He was very into that style of cinema. And he used to say that one day, he hoped there'd be a time where we wouldn't need cinema at all, you know what I mean? He could just play the audience, like an organ.
Yeah.
And I never used to really understand what would be the fun in that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it started to make sense to me as I get older, because what he's really talking about is harnessing people's associations. And there are certain filmmakers, I think, that work directly with who we are, how we feel, the way that we are built psychologically, that certain stories dramatize emotional concerns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's no accident that all of the terms that are used in psychoanalysis come from myths, Narcissus, Oedipus, all that sort of stuff. And all of those early myths, I think, were an attempt to describe who we are, how we feel, and all the Grimm's fairy tales and stuff essentially deal with feelings of abandonment. They're for children, so they essentially deal with the idea of how do we manage feeling abandoned, and I think Hitchcock, he starts off and he's just making us feel suspense, But
he also deals a lot with sexuality. His films also deal a lot with sexuality. Yeah. And
well, that's obviously interesting to him because, he's a fat guy that's only slept with one woman.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's surrounded by beautiful women all the time, and he loves them. You can see it in the way he photographs it. And you can see it in Marnie. I can see it because of how concerned he is for Marnie. I mean, Marnie has her own backstory. She has her own trauma
from childhood.
And some of the most moving moments in the movie for me are the ones where that trauma is examined. It's done lovingly. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that Hitchcock gets much more sophisticated as he gets older. His films are more and more and more sophisticated. And Marnie is probably the high point for me,
of his career.
But they hated it, and, if you're an old guy, and he's kind of like, he's really showing you his ass, you know what I mean? He's showing you his heart on his sleeve, and people just ridicule him. Yeah. He sort of gives up from that point on, People like Frenzy, but I don't really like anything he's done after Marnie, yeah.
And also the interesting thing is that we're talking about all the psychological aspects of the characters in Hitchcock films, but in the States during his time, he was never taken seriously.
Yeah.
And it was only after the Hitchcock Truffaut book came out and a French cultural icon like Truffaut said, this guy is good, so that's how the American established started to accept him. And you started your filmmaking career outside the States, and very quickly afterwards did your second film in the States. Today, is it still so hard to get accepted by the American establishment as a non-US filmmaker?
Every movie that gets made is kind of like a miracle. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I think anyone will tell you that it's just like the most peculiar set of circumstances have to arise to make a movie happen. It's a lot easier if you make movies that make money, and it's very difficult for me to make a film that I just want to make. You know what I mean? Basically, you have to come up with an offer they can't refuse. You have to bring them a movie star and not ask for too much money, and then you can kind of get a movie done. But it seems like making films is so expensive. It's worse than it's ever been.
So the industry has become tougher in America.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was a certain period of time where they would take a risk. They're going to make their summer tentpole movies, and but they would always, maybe they would take a risk here and there, but they're not taking risks anymore, and they would prefer to make 4 $200 million movies and have 2 of them fail, or even 3 of them fail, you know, than make, you know, 20 films.
But usually it's very hard to formulate a film. I mean, it's always, you can make box office or you can fail miserably.
It's not about trying to make a movie that makes money. It's trying to, if you're a studio head, it's about making a good corporate decision. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get called into, because that job has like real high mortality rate. You know what I mean? If you don't, you know, it's like being Caesar, you know, in the Roman Empire. Like, you know, you're not going to die a natural death.
Somebody has to step
So
in.
they have to make good decisions on paper, which is like, you know, commercial story with movie stars, and it doesn't look dumb, you know. You can make a movie like, if you're a studio head, you can make a movie like Showtime, you know, like with, what was it, Robert De Niro and Eddie Murphy? You know?
Yeah.
And it looks like a good corporate decision on paper. Now, that movie might go out and bomb horribly, but nobody's going to point the finger at the studio head and say, why did you make that film? You can make a movie like, well, like Jesse James, you know, and people are going to be asking Jeff Rabinoff, why did you make that movie? That's crazy, you know.
And do you think that was a risky decision in terms of the studio heads to make? Was that a risky decision for the studios, the Assassination of Jesse?
Yeah, but you know, it's all based on fear of loss. That's the big motivating force. So, you know, they've got a Brad Pitt movie, and it costs less than, you know, $40 million. If they let it go and somebody else makes it and it's a big success, they're going to be asked, why did they let it go? You know what I mean? Yeah. So. You just have to play on what they're more scared of. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And what they should have done was let it go.
Let it go.
You know.
And what I read during the filming, that film was supposed to come out in 2006. Yeah. It was expected for a theatrical release, and it ended up going to a wide distribution in 2007, almost a year after.
Yeah.
Was there a problem on the final cut?
Yeah, we just, you know, we fought over the movie, what it should be. And it was just, you know, like warfare, basically.
Is that the definitive Andrew? Is that the definitive Andrew Dominik cut? The film
well,
that
yeah, there is one. There's one there's 2 that are better, I think. But you know, the thing is like. For the people that like the film, they might not like my cut better. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's only like 5 minutes difference, but the 5 minutes
is the golden moment.
Better. Yeah. So you know, I see directors' cuts all the time. You know, where directors have,
and I
always think the original cut is better.
I totally agree. Yeah. So that means sometimes studios do actually have a better idea than the director.
No, I don't. I don't think they do have a better idea. But I don't know, something can happen in the process. You know what I mean? Because like, but it depends. You know what I mean? Like no one like Marnie. I love Marnie. It wouldn't have scored well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like at a test screening situation, obviously it's not going to score. And I think many films that I love are not well thought of, you know.
In terms of box office?
In terms of box office. And even some of them have bad reputations as movies, you know. Yeah. But for whatever reason, you know, they speak to me, you know. And they say that, you know, movies are a communal art form, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's about a group of people sitting in the theatre, you know, and there's kind of like a mass thing that goes on. But, you know, for me, I always watch a movie by myself. It doesn't matter who I'm there with, you know.
Yeah. And what didn't they like when they saw your cut of Assassination of Jesse James?
Well, you know, just everything.
They were surprised by the whole film?
Yeah, no, they just didn't, you know, it's just not their idea of a movie. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like movies are, all American movies are about like, you know, it's like the pluck. It's like the hero's journey. You know what I mean? It's like the immature, plucky, sort of individual that goes out and you know, has adventures and then sacrifices himself for the good of the tribe. You know, and in the process earns, you know.
So it's actually very formulated.
Sorry?
It's very formulated, the way they built the structure of the story.
Yeah. But they're also myths too, you know. And they love superhero movies, you know.
It's a hero's journey, basically.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in superhero movies, you know, because they love superhero movies in America, but superhero movies are always the same story, and they're about somebody who develops magical powers at the first sign of trouble, but they always have to have a secret identity. You know, their self is always split, and it's usually due to something that can harm them, that comes from their story of origin. You know what I mean, like their childhood or something like that. And because of this, they have to split themselves in half. You know, and one half can get like public acclaim. You know what I mean? And then the other half, the real self, you know, has no hope of intimacy, you know? And this is the story that Americans love. And it's strange to me.
Would you be interested in doing a like a comic book?
No. No, not really. You know. You know, but in a way, Taxi Driver is the same story.
Yeah.
You know, Taxi Driver is a superhero film, you know. It's like Batman, you know, but real.
Jesse James was a superhero, maybe, from his time.
Maybe. You mean for Bob? I guess it is, yeah. I guess you're right. Never thought of that.
And I mean, in your movies, you bring out amazing performances from your actors. You bring out amazing performances from your actors.
Yeah.
In Chopper, Eric Bana became worldwide famous. In Jesse James, Brad Pitt's performance is considered among the best his career. Casey Affleck got nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
What is the process of working with actors? Do you focus on the casting? Once you got the right actor, you leave it to the actor, or you direct them till you got the perfect performance?
It depends, and it's both.
It's both.
You know, you obviously have to cast the right person, or it's not going to work. And then every actor's different, you know. But if you because I write the script, you know what I mean? I have a very strong sense of who the people are, you know. And so knowing who you want the characters to be is a real help, you know. And then you've just got to like, essentially it's like playing cowboys and Indians, you know, when you're a kid and you like play cowboys and Indians, or you play war, or kids use their imagination all the time, and they invent a story that that goes with the game, you know. And acting is exactly the same thing, you know. It's just basically, it's to try to get it to that, you know. It's more sophisticated, but it's basically that, you know. And the thing that I try to do is to just have actors have something that they're trying to do in a scene, you know, and something that they're worried about, and you can make up a different story every take. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then you just wait until you're watching. You're not directing the film anymore. You're watching it.
You just become an audience as a director.
Yeah, exactly. And the director is like the audience's representative. You know, he's like, you know, standing quality control, like, you know, deciding what you're going to see.
What would happen if you would say, oh my God, I made a total mistake, this guy's not right for this role?
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do?
It happens on every movie. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hitchcock said something funny about it. He said, I love the castings in Disney films.
Right.
Because if you don't like the performance, you can tear it and throw it away and start drawing a new character.
Yeah.
And talking about Hitchcock, again, he was very articulate about what he was going to shoot.
Yeah.
And nothing seems to be improvised.
Yeah.
And the films are executed in that same way.
Yeah.
How do you, and he was doing extensive storyboards.
Yeah.
So he was knowing exactly what he was going to shoot. How
Yeah.
do you prepare for your films? Do you draw storyboards?
I do, but I'm not like I'm not like that master, and those directors are amazing to me, where they can just conceive the movie, from like a picture book, and they don't have to throw anything away, and it's a real skill, but no, I mean,
Do you improvise?
yeah, I mean, you're always improvising. Yeah. I mean, I think that, for me, what I want is for the film to be alive. To always feel like it's, that it's growing and that something is coming into it and that you're having lucky accidents and all that stuff, because the movie's like an exploration, He kind of knows what he's doing. Well, he thinks he knows what he's doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's probably revealing a lot more of himself than he thinks he is, because I think everyone is revealing in art, everyone's revealing themselves and hiding themselves at the same time.
At one point or another, yeah.
And, in his day, people aren't sitting around talking about movies as art, you know what I mean? So, in some ways, those directors had a real advantage over filmmakers today, because they can just always hide behind the idea that they're craftsmen, but, I'm like, and, we don't get the experience that those people have.
Yeah.
They're making movie after movie after movie after movie.
John Ford, he did around 150 films.
Yeah. And they don't, if a movie flops, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They just make another one,
They were doing 4 or 5 films a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
But directors nowadays,
they're lucky if they do.
Your whole career feels like it's riding on the movie, because they make less of them and they cost more. And it's a big business,
Yeah.
In the 70s, in the golden age, movies were not a big business. They were not, corporations were buying movie studios to be cool, but their main business was like making cars or, whatever it is that they did. Transamerica, I don't know what they did.
So basically, the industry was more forgiving.
Much more forgiving, yeah.
And today, if you're a first-time director, if it's bad, you're out. You rarely get a second chance, probably.
No, there's a lot of bad directors that get second and third and fourth chances, I think. But, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more pressure.
And you also write your screenplays.
Yeah.
And when the film is over, does it happen that your original intentions start to change around in the editing for the sake of the movie? Like,
the thing is that the feelings survive.
the feelings survive.
Yeah, the thing that drives the film, survives. If I were to go back and read the script of Chopper, I would not imagine the movie that I shot or cut. And the same with Jesse James. If I read the script, I imagine different looking people, different houses, different everything. But the feeling that the story gives me is the same. The movie delivers the same feeling. It's just not...
It's not in the same chronology, the story.
Well, it's just not the same. It doesn't look or sound or feel the same. Because in a screenplay, everything's perfect, The acting is perfect. There's, you don't have any limitations. You say, it's Kansas City in 1882, and it's Kansas City in 1882. It's perfect,
Yeah.
But when you're shooting a movie, it's like Kansas City in 1882. It's just like a little street over here, with.
So basically, not even to the studios, but cinema can be an art of compromise, a battle of compromise, even to yourself as an artist.
Always compromising. Yeah.
So then the question is how much you compromise.
well, it's what you compromise about.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like people look at Marnie, right?
Yeah.
And they'll say, you know, it's old-fashioned, and it's like a studio picture, and there's, you know, giant backdrops, you know, of ships in Baltimore, and he's using Sean Connery instead of, like, Cary Grant or whatever. I don't see any of that stuff, you know. What I see is the feeling that the film gives me, you know. I think she's fantastic. People don't like Tippi Hedren, you know.
Yeah.
They think that, you know, she's a bit stiff or something, but I think she's great.
Well, he originally intended to do the movie with Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly, yeah.
And that was his original intention, but somehow she bailed out at the last minute.
Yeah.
And he was really heartbroken because
Yeah.
he really wanted to do a movie again with Grace Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I think Tippi Hedren is amazing in that film.
Yeah, yeah.
And Hitchcock, when he started first his career, he was writing films, and he ended up in Germany for a British production in the 20s. And that's where he had the chance to witness the filming of Murnau's The Last Laugh.
The Last Laugh, yeah.
And he was very much influenced by Murnau and especially German Expressionism.
Yeah.
And he used all those techniques in his later films in terms of set design,
Yeah.
lighting, camera movements. Do you have like an era of filmmaking that has made a distinctive influence on your filmmaking style?
Yeah, many people, you know. You know, the first movie I ever saw where I just went, oh my God, you know, like I didn't know movies could be that good was Raging Bull, you know. And I was just like, you know, knocked out. I just didn't realize you could make a film that was as good as that,
Yeah.
you know. And I love David Lynch. You know, I think that he is the greatest living director. I think that guy is working at the very epicenter, you know, like of what movies are, you know, because he harnesses the way we're injured, you know. It's like he can plug directly into all trauma that we feel and bring it out through a movie.
And you can see a lot of traces of Hitchcock in his films.
Very much so.
Very much
And I think most of the people that write about movies from that point of view are always going to talk about Hitchcock, and they're always going to talk about David Lynch. And in some ways, David Lynch is the direct descendant of Hitchcock, I think, you know.
Today.
Yeah. And it's a real shame that he's not making movies. You know? But that's the climate of you know, of Hollywood, is that I don't know if that's true though, because every time you meet some independent financier, they're always saying how they're trying to get David Lynch to make a movie, and he just doesn't want to do it, you know.
Maybe as an artist he feels there is nothing much left to tell as an artist, or maybe different, because he's doing a lot of art stuff.
Yeah. Well, making movies is hard, you know, and you have to get up at like, you know, early in the morning, and
Work till late.
you know, you have to deal with people who are upset all the time. You know, people are always upset with you.
Negative energy. Negative energy.
Yeah, yeah. People, you know, making movies is expensive, and where there's money involved, people are scared, and everyone's scared, you know, who's making a film. And then you make the film, and you know yourself, you feel anxiety about like how people are going to see it, you know. And
what part of filmmaking do you enjoy most? The writing, the set, the actual shooting, or the editing?
I really like I really like imagining the film before I start writing it. And I like sound design. I like sound. The hardest is editing, you know, because you just realize that, you know, you've made a piece of shit, and that you have to do everything you can to kind of like try and disguise it. And shooting's gotten easier for me, you know, like I used to be very worried, Because when you shoot a movie, or for me, when I shoot a movie, I'm failing 90% of the time. 90% of what I'm doing or what I'm looking at is not good. But then I started to realize that I only need to get, 10% right, and I can cut it together,
And you started, we were talking, right after film school doing commercials and music videos, and then you did Chopper.
Yeah.
Chopper is a very interesting film. It's a real-life story. And, is his autobiography, is it a bit fictionalized, or is it like the 100% accurate thing of the events?
No. I mean, it's all a fantasy, that he has of himself, and there are some, real stories.
Real stories.
The most fascinating thing about the books is how he organizes language. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's lying to you, but you can tell by the way he organizes the lie how he feels, He's always contradicting himself. And the thing that made me fascinated with Chopper was he would say, I've killed people and I don't regret any of it, And then the next second he's saying that he has dreams, where the face of his victims come back to him. And that was what was really interesting to me about Mark,
And you have actually met the real Chopper?
Yeah, of course. I met him, when I first met him, he was in jail, and he was never going to be released. And I felt safe, And then just about 3 weeks before we started shooting, they changed the law and they released him from prison,
Is that why you started making movies in Hollywood?
Sorry?
Is that why you started making?
No, Mark actually, it was terrifying, particularly, the anxiety of the movie coming out is also knowing that Mark is going to see the film. And
was he happy with the final version?
Yes, he was, and I was really surprised because many things he told me not to put in the movie, you know what I mean? I put in the film, and I was very worried about how he was going to react to it.
The film has a very distinctive visual style, especially the use of very vibrant colors. It's even sometimes over-dominating the scenes.
Yeah.
Why did you choose a visual storytelling in terms of colors and set design?
With Chopper?
Chopper, yeah.
Yeah. Well, with Chopper, Chopper feels safe in jail. So we wanted to make jail a really kind of soothing place, and it's kind of like, it looks like the polar bear cage at the zoo.
Yep.
All the walls, and it's kind of blue, and it's like a submarine. But then when he's released from jail, the world's like that. He's got sort of agoraphobia, and we just wanted the world to feel like too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of graphic violence in the film. In Chopper.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortably when you're shooting violent scenes?
Yeah, well, shooting violence is just, it's always silly because it's like special effects and, but, I like violence.
You like violence?
Yeah, I mean, I like to feel something when I see a movie, I want to be, if something's violent, I want it to affect me, and I want it to be distressing. So, if it's distressing, I feel really happy,
Yeah. Talking about moving to Assassination of Jesse James, was that the American Western a particular genre that you wanted to explore, or you liked the story, the book? What intrigued you to do a Western?
I've never really been a big fan of Westerns. I mean, I like certain Westerns a lot, like Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and I like acid Westerns, like,
How about the
like John
real
Rowski
classic,
or
the
something.
John Ford films? How about the real?
I'm not a huge John Ford fan. I know it's kind of sacrilegious to say that. I do like The Searchers, obviously, because.
But there are some scenes that really reminded me, especially the way the landscapes were used.
Coming out the door.
The doors and stuff, which were, I
Yeah.
think, a lot of reference to John Ford in that film.
Yeah, that's true. But it's also like, if you come out the door,
That's
it
John
looks like
Ford.
John Ford.
That's John Ford.
Yeah. I do like The Searchers, but no, it was the book, and I really like Western literature. You know, like I love Cormac McCarthy and the whole idea of the westward expansion. You know, which is essentially you know, it's got everything going on in it. You know what I mean? It's like they're creating a civilization and they're destroying a civilization at the same time, you know. But this is not really that kind of a Western.
Yeah.
This is more like a gangster film set.
It's more
in
lyrical, like
1882.
Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. It's more a visual journey in some sort. It's a very personal film. Assassination of Jesse James. It's truly in the fashion of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Yeah, I guess it's got more of that idea because it's, you know, it's just about a guy. You know, Bob is very anxious and Jesse's kind of depressed, you know, and Bob imagines that if he was Jesse, he'd feel fine, you know. And it's like a thwarted love story because, you know, Jesse just doesn't, you know, he just toys with Bob. So I kind of relate to, you know, all the characters, and, you know, it's also about that, you know, Bob's kind of desperate need to be taken seriously, you know, and he imagines that if he were famous, that he would be taken seriously, you know. And Jesse's on the other side of that. He already knows that, like, he's completely isolated, you know. And you know, it's a sort of a rise and fall story, I guess.
And throughout the movie, I got the sense that the Jesse James character is actually preparing to his own death.
Yeah.
It's because he obviously knows what's going on behind him, and who is backstabbing from his gang.
Yeah.
And is basically especially the second half of the film is a man's journey to his own execution.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a pretty dark story. That's probably because the studios were surprised with the final version.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the movie they want to make, and you know, to be fair to them, it's not the kind of movie people want to see either. You know, so if you're going to work in movies, you know, where the tool is essentially money, you know what I mean? What you need to make movies is cash.
Yeah.
You've either got to make them for less money, or you've got to like come up with something that people want to see, you know.
Yeah. And your last film, which of course none of us have seen yet, Killing Them Softly.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, give us a little hint about the film?
Well, the movie's like it's you know, so it's supposed to be like a screwball comedy, and it's a movie about an economic crisis.
The recent crisis?
No, yes and no. It's about an economic crisis in a criminal economy. It's like these three dumb guys, they rob a mob-protected card game, and all the card games shut down, you know. And they have to, Brad plays the guy that has to fix the problem. And in fixing it, he has to deal with who actually did it, you know, and he has to deal with the person that they think did it. And it sort of has parallels to the bailout, you know, the whole, you know, so it's kind of like a self-conscious political cartoon or something. You know.
And it was very well received in Cannes?
It was well received, yes. It appears to be, you know. I mean, I haven't actually, I'm trying not to read reviews, you know. Because you can get very unhealthy. You know what I mean? You like Google yourself all the time.
Do you read reviews?
I used to, you know, but I don't think it's good for you, you know. And if you believe the good, you have to believe the bad.
Yeah. Do you read the negative ones?
Of course. You know, well, I did, but on this one, I'm not reading anything.
Yeah.
Not yet. You know, I'm sure there's going to come a moment, you know, one day where I'll, you know, torture myself and. But not right now, you know.
What is next? I mean, there were rumors of you doing a Marilyn Monroe biography.
This is what I want to do next. Yeah, it's like my dream film.
What what is it that interests you in Marilyn Monroe?
Well, Marilyn Monroe is, you know, it's like the orphan that got lost in the woods type story. It's a fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale.
And it's, you know, my obsession with Hitchcock is kind of like based on how to do that movie, you know, which I imagine is kind of like that movie is very much it's set in like inside her, you know,
her.
and we are from her point of view. The whole story and even the way she sees the world is totally told from inside her. So I've been thinking a lot about Hitchcock, you
When
know,
you were
from that point of view, you know, and also like, you know, Polanski movies like The Tenant,
absolutely.
which is, you know,
So you want to go more into the inner character
inside
of the
inside
protagonist.
people. I mean, all movies are sort of like, they should be some kind of externalization of an internal drama, you know. I think that's why stories appeal, you know, because they dramatize some fundamental emotional or psychological concern, you know. And I think that's what happened to him, you know. He starts just with suspense, you know what I mean? Like the bomb ticking under the table. But then he starts to realize that there's a lot more going on inside people, you know. And he's trying to make movies that push much deeper buttons, you know. And I think the reason I like Marnie is because it pushes very deep buttons in me, you know. I really identify with Marnie, and I identify with Sean Connery, you know. It's maybe not as perfect as Vertigo, you know. Vertigo is very neatly
constructed,
done, you know, where the plot dramatizes the theme, or almost proves the theme. Marnie's a bit more kind of like freewheeling and half-formed, and maybe that's why, for me, it's got a much greater impact. But I think it's, you know, they asked me, like, you know, to come here and present a movie, you know, and I think the best thing to do is to present a film that is fantastic, that is not everyone knows about. You know, anyone can present, like, you know, Citizen Kane or Raging Bull or something. You want to come up with, and you know, Marnie should be on there. It should be in the montage.
Yeah, I mean, we will email it to BFI, who sent us this.
Well, I think they did restore Marnie back in the 90s, you know, and I have seen a print of it.
A 35 millimeter print version.
Yeah. I mean, they re-released a bunch of them, you know, for the estate. You know, now they have dependence cuts of movies. They used to have they had the studio cut, and then they had the director's cut, and now they have the children's cut. You know, the children want to re-release the movie with extra scenes so they can make more money for the estate. And I think a bit of that went on with Hitchcock, you know, back in like the 90s, right? They re-released all those.
Yeah, they restored and did the releasing. So we're running out of time. Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Okay. I gotta walk out.